At 2:14 in the morning, local time, on February 28th, while most of the world was fast asleep, the decades-long, very tense standoff over Iran's nuclear program finally came to an end. For years, right, we've watched the international community walk this tightrope of sanctions and diplomacy. But last night, that tightrope snapped. What happened next was Operation Epic Fury, a military strike so coordinated on a scale we just haven't seen in modern times. The events of just the last 24 hours are incredibly complex, they're moving at lightning speed, and they have absolutely set the world on a dangerous, frankly terrifying new course. And you'll want to stay till the end because some shocking things are going to be revealed as we break this all down. So let's get right to it.
Okay, so here's how we're going to deconstruct this massive event. First, we're digging into the strike itself, Operation Epic Fury. Then, we're going to unpack the radical new policy that's driving all of this, something called the Hegseth Doctrine. From there, we'll look at the immediate and violent retaliation from Iran and the chaos it's already unleashing. Then, we'll trace the shockwaves that are hammering the global economy. And finally, we have to look at the terrifying question of what comes next, in what might just be the most dangerous 72 hours of our lifetime.
So it all started in the dead of night. And let's be clear, the goal here wasn't just to, damage Iran's nuclear program. It was to completely decapitate it, to dismantle the command structure of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. This was a joint operation, a 1-2 punch from the United States and Israel, and it was designed for maximum, and I mean irreversible, impact. It seems patience has officially run out. The timeline here is just breathtakingly fast and brutally efficient. Think about this. Just before 2 a.m., the attack starts not with a bomb, but with code, a digital first strike. 19 minutes later, the physical assault begins, and it's with America's newest, most secret weapon. By 4 a.m., a single cryptic social media post from the White House hints that the #1 target might have been hit, which throws this already chaotic situation into a potential crisis over who's now in charge in Iran.
So how did they pull this off? Well, the operation was a masterpiece of military synchronization, almost like a surgical procedure with 3 different blades. First, the cyber attack. A joint NSA-Mossad worm, which we're hearing is a way more powerful version of that old Stuxnet virus, completely blinded Iran's air defenses. Their Russian-made S-400 systems were basically told the sky was empty. Second, the American heavy lifting, just raw destructive power aimed at facilities buried deep inside mountains. And third, the Israeli part, called Operation Roaring Lion, focused on precision strikes against the IRGC's top leadership in Tehran.
And this operation, this was the combat debut of the B-21 Raider. I mean, until yesterday, this thing was more myth than reality. It's a 6th-generation stealth bomber designed to be pretty much undetectable, and it can carry the heaviest conventional bombs in the entire U.S. arsenal. Its successful use here, well, it sends a chilling message to every single adversary on the planet: there is nowhere you can hide. And the force involved here is just staggering. The B-21s weren't dropping your standard bombs. They were armed with GBU-57s, the massive ordnance penetrators. Each one weighs 30,000 pounds. These aren't designed to make a crater on a runway. They're designed to punch through hundreds of feet of solid reinforced concrete and turn a mountain bunker into absolute dust. We're talking about eradication. But that kind of overwhelming force, it just begs the question, why this? And why right now? The answer, it seems, lies in a dramatic policy shift happening in Washington. A new, very aggressive philosophy that people are calling the Hegseth Doctrine. And this isn't just a small change in tactics. It is a fundamental rewrite of America's rules of engagement in the Middle East. This quote from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's press conference this morning, it tells you everything you need to know. That's not just rhetoric, it's the absolute core of this new doctrine. The era of trying to manage the Iranian threat, of just kicking the can down the road with sanctions and deals, it's over. The new goal is finality. It's a philosophy that sees a nuclear Iran not as a problem to be managed, but as an existential threat that has to be eliminated, no matter the cost. I mean, the shift in thinking is truly seismic. You see, where the previous administration practiced what they called strategic patience, using diplomacy to just delay Iran's nuclear program, the Hegseth Doctrine demands overwhelming decisiveness to completely eliminate it. It reframes the whole situation, not as some delicate negotiation, but as a war that's been simmering for 40 years, and a war that Washington has apparently now decided to finish. Of course, an attack of this magnitude could never, ever go unanswered. The moment the sun came up over Tehran, it was clear the hornet's nest had been kicked. The question was never if Iran would retaliate, but how hard, how fast, and where. And we got the answer very, very quickly, and it was violent. And what's making all this chaos even worse is the biggest wild card of all, these unconfirmed but very persistent reports that Ayatollah Khamenei is dead. That 4 a.m. post from President Trump really lit a fuse. And even though Iranian state media denies it, we're hearing from sources about smoke coming from the supreme leader's compound. If the 86-year-old cleric is gone, Iran isn't just fighting a war on the outside. It's facing a massive power vacuum on the inside, maybe even civil collapse, a humanitarian crisis you can barely imagine. In the middle of all this internal chaos, the regime just lashed out. The response came in 2 parts. First, a huge ballistic missile barrage. We're talking over 200 of them, targeting the Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar and the U.S. 5th Fleet's headquarters in Bahrain. But the second part? Well, it's arguably more dangerous for the entire world. Iran's so-called shadow fleet of civilian tankers started dropping smart mines right into the Strait of Hormuz, threatening to choke off the world's most critical artery for oil.
And this is where the conflict hits home for absolutely everyone. The mining of the Strait of Hormuz was basically an economic declaration of war, and the markets responded instantly and brutally.
$165.70. That was the price for a single barrel of crude oil when the markets closed today. A number like that represents a massive shock to the system, a sudden tax on the entire global economy. That's going to mean higher prices for gas, for shipping, for food, for pretty much everything. To put that in perspective, this 15% spike is the single largest one-day jump in oil prices in modern history. It's bigger than the shock we saw from the 1990 invasion of Kuwait. It even surpasses the 1973 oil crisis that brought the Western world to its knees. This is a historic economic event, and it all happened in less than 12 hours. And the fallout is forcing the world's other great powers off the fence. They have to pick a side. China, which relies heavily on Iranian oil, is reportedly furious, threatening what it's calling economic countermeasures. And Russia? Russia's in a really tough spot. Iran is its main supplier of drones for the war in Ukraine. So what does Moscow do? Intervene to save its ally? Or cut its losses to focus on its own problems? The whole world is holding its breath. So all of this, the strike, the new doctrine, the retaliation, the economic chaos, it all brings us to right now, to this moment. And we are entering what analysts are calling the most dangerous 72-hour window of the 21st century. The very next moves from Washington to Tehran and Jerusalem could literally determine the course of history. The entire situation is balanced on a knife's edge. The Pentagon has already warned that if the mining in the Strait of Hormuz continues, it will trigger Phase 2, a total naval blockade of Iran. In Israel, Prime Minister Netanyahu has publicly said that Operation Roaring Lion is not over, which implies more high-level targets are still in their sights. All while the global economy just hangs in the balance, a hostage to a tiny strip of contested water. And so we are left with this stark, frankly terrifying question. Has the United States, trying to eliminate one threat, actually unleashed a far greater one? Are we watching the opening shots of a regional conflict that could spiral into a third world war? Or is this the violent, high-stakes gamble, that short, sharp shock that finally breaks the clerical regime in Tehran and allows something new to take its place? The honest answer is, nobody knows. The entire world is now waiting and watching to find out. Make sure you subscribe to this channel for the latest updates on this developing story, and be sure to watch the video coming up on your screen next.